Good afternoon. I am Holly Wimsatt, the Director of the Bureau of Disability Services. It's good to be with you today. Appreciate you sharing some of your time with us. We'll get started. It is 3 o'clock on the nose, so we will get started. And as usual, we are starting with our core value that all people are empowered to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their dreams. Today in the Provider and Case Management webinar, we're going to cover a variety of topics. I believe we should be putting in the Q&A how to sign up for DDRS announcements, and also an email address for our Money Follows the Person team. I will say this is a new Teams format that we're using. This is just our second month using it, and we are still learning some of the quirks, if you will, with this particular format. So we appreciate your patience. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about how to use live captions. So if you want to use live captions, just turn on live captions and subtitles. Select captions, subtitles on in your video controls. And then to change the caption language, select settings, captions, subtitles, and then choose the language you want. How to ask a question. So on the right of your screen is a Q&A box. You'll want to select that. You can type your question in the compose box and then select send. And it's important to note that your question will only be visible to presenters, myself, and then one of our BEADS team members that's online here to help field questions. We'll answer questions as time permits. We've got quite a bit of information to cover today, so we will, if we don't get to questions or only get to some of them, we will cover them in the next webinar, any that we don't get to today. All right, for today, we'll have updates for all providers, some updates specifically for providers of services on the health and wellness and traumatic brain injury waivers, and then some updates for providers of services on the community integration and habilitation and family supports waiver. And then also some an invitation to give us some ideas of future webinar topics. I do want to note, as I spoke a moment ago about having this newer format, we were not able in the new format last month to get questions. We apologize for that. Again, we're adapting to this new format. Hopefully that function will work today, and we will cover any questions you have again in a future webinar. Okay, we'll start with provider updates for all providers. So we have been engaged in a waiver system consolidation. So as we announced on January 31st, the Bureau of Disability Services is incorporating the health and wellness waiver, traumatic brain injury waiver, and the Money Follows the Person program into existing BEADS technology systems. So that is the BEADS portal. So as case managers for health and wellness and traumatic brain injury waivers today, work in CAMS as of July 1 this year. That work will be done in the BEADS portal. So the good news is we've got state staff doing some user acceptance testing, and we'll have more information coming soon. Please know we will be providing training to case managers, knowing that you are not likely familiar with the BEADS portal. But I will say it is an intuitive system, and we think that you will appreciate some of the simplicity of it. So we look forward to engaging with you soon once we get through some of the testing to make sure things are going the way we need them to go. So watch for more information on that and for announcements on trainings and so forth. We have a reminder here on incident reporting. So as you case managers are aware, case managers are responsible for timely submission of incident report follow-ups every 7 days until the state or BEADS declares the incident to be closed. While an entity is identified as responsible for submitting the follow-up report, it is the team's responsibility for addressing and responding to the needs of the individual and any requests for information, including documentation. So sometimes when we receive an incident report, we have questions about that. So while the case manager is responsible for submitting the incident report follow-up, the team is responsible for getting the information that's requested so that follow-up can be submitted. Additionally, the provider is required to complete an investigation under certain circumstances per the mandatory components of investigation policy. If at any point during the processing of an incident, it may be deemed a critical or a sentinel event, the critical part of an incident can be closed without the entire incident being closed. So when the critical status remains open, follow-up is required within 3 days to address those immediate health and safety needs. That usually involves notification to Adult Protective Services or Department of Child Services, or a situation in which staff is required to be suspended or an investigation is required. So everyone is familiar with the Home and Community-Based Services Settings Rule. Just want to talk about it and lease agreements or tenant agreements. The final rule includes additional requirements for provider-owned or controlled settings. So one of those requirements is that the individual has a lease or a legally enforceable agreement. If the provider holds a lease with the property owner or landlord and then subleases to the individual, then a copy of the original lease must also be provided that demonstrates the allowance of the sublease, as well as written consent from the property owner or landlord as applicable. And as an additional reminder, those lease agreements should offer the same responsibilities and protections to individuals receiving home and community-based services that is in lease or tenant agreements for individuals not receiving home and community-based services. So I want to talk a little bit about choice. As we all know, choice is a cornerstone of home and community-based services. Choice of services and choice of providers of those services. So all waiver participants must be offered choice of providers, and that includes choice of case management provider. Choice must be offered, and assigned choice list or pick list, whatever term you use, must be completed and uploaded in the case management system of record. So for the community integration habilitation waiver and the family support waiver, that's a choice list that's uploaded into the BEADS portal. For the health and wellness and traumatic brain injury waivers, that is a pick list that must be loaded into CAMS. Individuals may choose a new provider, including case management entities, at any time for any reason. And case managers are responsible for ensuring individuals and families have the information they need to choose the best fit for them and for facilitating that choice. So making sure individuals and their legal reps have those choice or pick lists and that you're supporting them in their search for potentially a new provider. Maybe that's of a current service or maybe that's a new service that they're adding. All right. We have some provider updates for the health and wellness and TBI waivers. So money follows the person. We have some program reminders on that. As a reminder, the money follows the person, or what we call MFP, provides support to individuals who have transitioned out of institutional settings and into the community for 365 days. So when I say institutional, those are qualifying institutional facilities, such as nursing facilities. And the money follows the person. The eligible period for that is up to 365 days. Case management entities are responsible for accurately tracking and calculating the active 365 days of MFP eligibility, or in the case of a leap year, individuals actually have 366 days of MFP eligibility. Our federal partners have clarified that for us. So in a leap year, the MFP eligibility period is 366 days instead of 365. Incorrectly tracking and calculating the 365 days of MFP eligibility that results in the extension of allowed active days of MFP eligibility is considered noncompliance with state and federal regulations and is subject to corrective actions. So it's very important that case managers watch that MFP eligibility period. I will say the BEADS portal has an internal tracking of those 365 days, which is helpful. Currently, CAMS does not. So case managers do have to track that. It is imperative that case management entities appropriately track interruptions and active days within the MFP program, and that they take the appropriate steps to ensure a smooth transition for an individual moving from MFP to home and community-based services waivers. So interruptions are defined as admissions to a nursing facility or incarceration to a different kind of setting. Any interruptions due to a nursing facility or incarcerated setting must be entered into the MFP system of record, and the number of days admitted or incarcerated added to the new calculated end date. Case managers must confirm all admission and discharge dates with the nursing facility billing office, Assessment Pro, or the incarcerated setting to ensure accuracy and avoid errors. MFP cases cannot have an annual or extension service plan beyond the anticipated MFP end date. So again, tracking those days is imperative, and that includes watching those interruptions and making sure that case managers are taking into account the amount of time or days that a person's participation in the MFP program is interrupted. So want to talk a little bit about independent case manager responsibilities for MFP, and this would be for individuals in the Money Follows the Person program through nursing facility level of care. So these would be individuals who we anticipate would eventually transition to, for example, the health and wellness waiver or the pathways waiver. So for Money Follows the Person participants to have a seamless transition from the MFP program to waiver, case managers must complete the following steps timely. And this is independent case managers, again, for individuals in, participating in MFP with nursing facility level of care. The ICM needs to verify and update the individual's demographic information, and that's in CAMS. Transfer the case to the MFP participant's local area agency on aging 90 days prior to the MFP participant's anticipated end date, to allow time for the necessary level of care for waiver initiation to be completed by the Area Agency on Aging. Now, that's important to note because the Area Agencies on Aging are the entity that are able to do those initial nursing facility level of care assessments. And when I say initial for waiver initiation. So it's also important that the independent case manager alert the Area Agency on Aging and the MFP team. And I believe we will be putting that email address in the chat in case you need it, of the transfer via email, which would include the case name, case number, and RID number. And please make sure that email is secure. So with Money Follows the Person for individuals, again, who are meeting that nursing facility level of care for home and community-based, or for MFP, the AAA also has some responsibilities. The AAA must complete the following steps timely to ensure that seamless transition for the individuals from Money Follows the Person to home and community-based services waiver. Again, verify and update individuals' demographic information, complete and document the assessment for nursing facility level of care, offer choice of case management provider, and then create an initial service plan using A63 as the funding source, effective on the 365th active day or 366th on a leap year of the MFP eligibility episode. So want to stress here these action steps, right? Checking the demographic information, completing the nursing facility level of care assessment, offering choice of case management provider, because that individual will be leaving the MFP program and moving to a home and community-based services or waiver. In this case, either the health and wellness waiver or the pathways waiver. And choice must be offered for the case management that would be provided through those waivers. Additionally, this reiterates what I just said. All waiver participants must be offered choice of providers, including case management. Choice must be offered, and a pick list must be completed, signed by the individual or legal rep, and uploaded into the system of record indicating the individual's chosen case management entity. So that would be loaded into CAMS. Additionally, the AAA should communicate, let's go back one slide, thank you, to the MFP team via email that all steps have been completed. And that should include the following information to the MFP team: the individual's name, case number, RID number. Again, that email should be sent securely. For questions related to the MFP program, we encourage you to email the MFP team at mfptracking@fssa.in.gov. We are happy to answer any questions you might have about that, so please do reach out. I know I covered a lot of material just now, so please do reach out if you have any questions. Okay. Next, the traumatic brain injury waiver, and we want to talk about level of care eligibility. So the traumatic brain injury waiver actually has two types of eligibility criteria. So in other words, a person may be able to access the traumatic brain injury waiver if they meet nursing facility level of care or ICFID level of care, which is intermediate care facility for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. So we're a little unique in that way that we have a waiver that actually has two individuals can access with two different levels of care. So eligibility is required for all initials, annuals, which should be submitted 90 days prior to the current service plan end date, and then re-entries. So that level of care assessment should be completed for initials, annuals, and then re-entries. So we want to talk a little bit about the access to the TBI waiver from out-of-state facilities, because we know that there are individuals who are Indiana residents who go out of state to seek support or treatment for traumatic brain injury. So I want to talk a little bit about the case management requirements in terms of facilitating assessments for individuals seeking the TBI waiver. So the individual must be a resident of the state of Indiana with a permanent Indiana residence. The assessment may occur via phone or virtual to gather level of care and service planning details, as well as collateral information from the facility that they're residing in. Before TBI waiver services can be activated, the facility discharge date must be verified, and the individual must be determined eligible for Indiana Medicaid in the appropriate waiver A category. When the individual discharges back to their Indiana residence, the case manager for the TBI waiver will complete a face-to-face home visit within 30 days after the facility discharge. So because the TBI waiver has has two different levels of care that an individual could meet, they do not have to meet both, meet one of those levels of care, we wanted to spend just a minute or two on case manager qualifications. So TBI waiver case managers must meet all case management qualifications as detailed in the CMS approved manual Appendix C, and have received training on the nursing facility level of care process by the Division of Aging or their designee. The Bureau of Disability Services waiver case managers performing the ICF ID level of care assessment must be a QIDP, a qualified intellectual disabilities professional, as specified by the standard within 42 CFR 483.430A. I do want to stress none of this is new. These are case manager qualifications that have been in place for some time. We just wanted to mention it again, knowing that it's been a bit since we talked about the case manager qualifications for the level of care assessments for the TBI waiver. But it's important to note that each type of assessment requires a set of skills, and that is why you see the difference in the requirements for the case managers that may be doing those level of care assessments. So a little bit about the overview of the ICFID level of care process for the TBI waiver. So this, for an individual to participate in the level of care process, the ICFID level of care process, it is required a completion of the BEADS application so that we can engage with the individual or family about what the level of care entails, what that assessment is like, and what it means if the individual is approved or denied. And just to make sure that individuals and families know who we are and what they're applying for so that we have those opportunities to have those conversations. We also need a confirmation of diagnosis form and collateral. There will be a face-to-face assessment and then ultimately an ICFID level of care determination by state staff. We proceed processing with the individual and their family as long as they're comfortable with us moving forward with the process. Again, we really want to have that conversation with them and need that BEADS application so that we can have that conversation. Currently, individuals seeking the traumatic brain injury waiver will undergo the nursing facility level of care assessment first. If that level of care is not met, they are referred to the Bureau of Disability Services, excuse me, and complete an application, and then our district offices will contact the individual or legal rep and explain kind of the process, explain what the next steps are, and then schedule an appointment to do the ICFID level of care assessment. So again, I think this process can be somewhat confusing for individuals and families. So we want to make sure that we are having those conversations both in the when the family's going through the nursing facility level of care assessment and when they're going through the ICFID level of care assessment. All right. Also, want to talk a little bit about the family support waiver and a reserve capacity on the family support waiver for individuals who are on the health and wellness waiver and lose nursing facility level of care, but meet the ICFID level of care. So the reserve capacity or priority criteria on the family support waiver provides access to the family support waiver for those individuals, again, who were receiving services through health and wellness, as an example, lose nursing facility level of care, but meet ICFID level of care. This is so that there is potentially not an individual going from health and wellness services through health and wellness to no services, right? If they're eligible for services through the family support waiver. The access criteria for this priority criteria or reserve capacity is, again, the person has to be active on the health and wellness waiver. They have to no longer meet criteria for nursing facility level of care, and they have to meet criteria for the ICFID level of care. Again, that ICFID level of care is assessed by BDS staff in the local district offices. A couple things to note about individuals who access the family support waiver through this reserve capacity or priority criteria. If we can move to the next slide. The health and wellness service plans must remain active through that transition to the family support waiver. This should happen relatively quickly. It is important as the health case manager on the health and wellness waiver to explain to the individual or legal rep or family or all of the above that because they no longer meet nursing facility level of care, there is an urgency for them to seek that level of care assessment through BEADS. Our goal is that we would not, the individuals would not see a break in service, but certainly if they're eligible for the family support waiver, but we need the family's help in responding to us timely when we reach out to schedule that assessment and so on, and to help us, secure any kind of collateral information we may need. Health and wellness service plans may receive an extension during the transition, but this should be a short extension. The health and wellness case manager must not terminate or deny the health and wellness service plan during this process. Again, we're trying to avoid any gap in service in the event that someone would be eligible for the family support waiver. It's also important that the family support waiver case manager and health and wellness case manager, with support of the BEADS point person, will coordinate on a transition date. It's important that the health and wellness service plan is not terminated early, as it could impact or would impact services and Indiana Medicaid eligibility. So there has to be coordination. If an individual is losing nursing facility level of care and is on the health and wellness waiver and meet ICFID level of care and is transitioning to the family support waiver, there has to be coordination between those two case management entities, because the health and wellness waiver will need to end on one day, and the very next day we would want the family support waiver to start, again, to avoid any loss of service. It is best practice for the health and wellness case manager to consult with BEADS before terminating the health and wellness waiver, so that we can prevent, again, a loss of service. That BEADS contact is Amy Rapp. If you have facilitated one of these transitions before, you're probably familiar with her. But there definitely needs to be that coordination, and it's really important that the health and wellness case manager, the chosen health and wellness case manager, the chosen family support waiver case manager, and BEADS are all helping support individuals through this transition and making sure they're aware of what comes next, right? What is the next step? What does that mean for you? What do we need from you to move forward with this, and so on. So communication is certainly key here to ensure that smooth transition. Again, the family support waiver priority criteria or reserve capacity requires completion of the BEADS application to engage with the individual or their family, the confirmation of diagnosis form and collateral, face-to-face assessment, the ICFID level of care determination, and then case management organization onboarding. So we have a couple of links here that go directly. The first goes directly to the BEADS webpage. The other goes to the forms where you can find the confirmation of diagnosis form. It took me a moment there. So these are good links for case managers to have, but also to share with individuals and families so that they can hop on to the BEADS webpage and take a look. There's fact sheets there on the family support waiver and so on. And again, the second link has the confirmation of diagnosis form, as well as other forms. All right, jump into a totally different topic. Medication dispenser install, or MEDI, and monitoring. Actually, I think that's a different acronym there, but I think it's MEDM. But anyway, it is MEDM. Apologize for that typo. The medication dispenser install and medication dispenser monitoring billing code is not a separately defined service within the health and wellness, pathways, or traumatic brain injury waivers. Medication dispensers are allowable, but they are covered under specialized medical equipment and supplies in the federally approved waivers. So to ensure that we are aligned, effective April 1st, any service plans that currently include or are requesting to add the medication dispenser install or monitoring will not be approved. Again, that medication dispensers are available and covered on the waiver, but they're available under specialized medical equipment and supplies. So for current plans that include medication dispenser install or medication dispenser monitoring, care managers must zero out the MEDM and request the medication dispenser through specialized medical equipment and supplies. All specialized medical equipment and supply requirements will apply, and case managers should work with individuals and providers now to help facilitate the removal of the MEDI and MEDM from the service plan. So again, case managers, if you have individuals that have MEDI and MEDM on their plans, we ask that you reach out to them quickly and support them through making some other arrangements. And maybe that's a medication dispenser through specialized medical equipment and supplies. Some general service plan reminders. Service plans are reviewed in the order they are received. If an individual is experiencing circumstances requiring that we expedite the review of the service plan, please email BEADS help That's beads.help@fssa.in.gov. We are working through those service plans as quickly as we can. Again, if an individual has an emergent situation, please reach out to Beads Help. When an individual is approved for state plan services through a home health agency, the case manager must submit an update to the individual service plan to reduce the attendant care hours that the home health support is now able to provide. Skilled respite is not to be used as a substitute for daily care. Skilled respite services provide temporary support in the place of the usual unpaid caregiver. And of course, compliance with all service definitions is required. This includes the exclusion of legally responsible individuals acting as a paid caregiver. When issues of noncompliance are suspected, a complaint will be filed. So we know that LRIs can provide structured family caregiving, so I do want to call that out. Next slide. Speaking of structured family caregiving, level of service assessments should be completed annually. However, case managers may complete a new level of service assessment at any time based upon, for example, a change in the individual status, request of the family, or determined necessary by the case manager. The current level of service assessment tool for structured family caregiving includes additional guidance to case managers on how to use the tool for the pediatric population. A new pediatric tool that would support level of service assessments, again for youth, will be released later this year, towards the end of the calendar year. Hey, level of care assessment representative update, or LCAR, effective July 1st, 2025. And we have talked about this before. In fact, I think we've used this very slide before. There will be one entity that completes all nursing facility level of care assessments and reassessments for those seeking nursing facility placement or home and community-based services through the health and wellness, traumatic brain injury, or pathways waivers. The nursing facility level of care assessment tool for adults is not changing. Nursing facility level of care will continue to be assessed utilizing the Inter-IHC tool. July 1st of 2025, we'll see implementation of new tools from the Inter-I suite of tools to appropriately assess nursing facility level of care for youth. This includes the Inter-I Peds home care tool and the Inter-I early years tool. And there will be training available for entities that will use those tools. Slide, please. Assignment of case manager and CAMs. So all active cases and CAMs should have an assigned case manager. All assigned case managers must be a case manager, right? So we would not expect to see case managers assigned who are, for example, admin staff at a case management company. Fictitious case managers will be removed by the CAMS team. So please make sure as you are working with your case managers, if you're a case management entity, that the individuals you are supporting through the provision of case management have actual case managers assigned in the CAMS system. Okay. Updates for providers of services on the community integration, habilitation, and family support waivers. I am going to note it does not appear that we are Oh, no, we are getting questions. Awesome. Good. It's working. Okay. We'll go back to the slides. So family and caregiver training. This is a service that provides education and support directly to the family caregiver of an individual in services in order to increase the confidence and stamina of the caregivers to support the individual. This can include education and training activities, and those education and training activities should be based on the family or caregiver's unique needs, and they must be specifically identified in the Person-Centered Individualized Support Plan, or PCISP. Some of the reimbursable activities include educational materials or training programs, workshops, and conferences for caregivers that are directly related to the caregiver's role as they're supporting the individual. And again, this should be specified in the PCISP. And that training, education, conferences, workshops could relate to understanding the individual's disability, achieving greater competence and confidence in providing support to the individual, developing or enhancing key parenting strategies, developing and accessing other community resources and supports, developing advocacy skills, or supporting the individual in developing self-advocacy skills. Education, training, or counseling must be aimed at assisting caregivers who support the individual to understand and address individual needs as specified in the PCISP. Service utilization. All right, let's talk about that. Case managers and providers should work together to ensure that services are appropriately reflected on the service plan or PCISP, and that they stay within an individual's allocation. When a request is made to move units, the case manager should request the utilization from the provider, and the provider should provide the case manager with an accurate and up-to-date utilization report to avoid over-utilization. Oh, and our favorite topic, provider attestations. So this, again, is for providers of services through the family support and the CIH waivers. A provider system administrator must log into the BEADS portal and confirm their provider profile information at a minimum of every 90 days. We are near the end of the first quarter of 2025. So all CIH and FS waiver providers are responsible for ensuring their provider profile remains accurate, and the provider attestation is a simple and effective way to do so. The provider profile information should always be updated anytime there is a change in the provider profile. So remember that provider profile is what feeds the choice list that is given to individuals and families. So it directly impacts their ability to access services. If you are a provider and you need assistance with completing the provider attestation, please refer to the BEADS portal user guide for providers located in the resource section of the BEADS portal under the user guides tab. We cannot stress enough the importance of doing this. This has a direct impact on the people we support if they are given a choice list with outdated information and unable to reach providers to see if they have the ability to support their family member. So please, we recently made some changes to the choice list to indicate when a provider has updated their profile. We will be continuing to assess the effectiveness of that feature in supporting providers and updating that information. So hopefully we will see improvement in the completion of those provider attestations. All right. We want to ensure that these webinars are helpful to you that they are valuable and worth your time. We realize how busy you are, and want to make this beneficial for you. So please let us know if there are topics you would like us to cover, if there are clarifications you would like us to provide. That would be for the health and wellness, the traumatic brain injury, community integration, rehabilitation, family support waiver, even our supervised group living. If there is a topic that you are interested in or need clarification on, let us know that. You can put it in the Q&A today. You can email Beads Help. You can email ideas to Beads Provider Services at fssa.in.gov. So please feel free to do that. All right, thank you so much. I see some questions, so I am going to read through some of these. If I do not get to yours, it means we're either running out of time or, to be honest, I wasn't sure about the answer and need to double check that. So we will flag it for inclusion in the next webinar. So first is a question that states, we use generic CAMS account for cases that are now on pathways and not receiving active case management from our agency. Is that account going to be disabled? Well, that is a great question. And that is one that we will have to take back because I need to double check that. So thank you for that question, and watch for a response to that in the next webinar, if not before. So we have a question about why it takes time to review service plans for vendor changes. So there are certain services that trigger reviews by state staff, and that was begun last year on what was the Age and Disabled waiver and is now the Health and Wellness waiver. So it's difficult for me to say why a service plan specifically that includes, for example, a vendor change of structured family caregiving would take some time to review, not knowing what other services might be on that plan. There is a note that it says it's causing lapse in services. It should not. That's the point of extension plans. There should be no gap in service if a plan is pending review. Those services should continue through the extension plan. There is another question about the assignment of CM and CAMS. So again, I'm going to take that one back. This one has a lot of detailed information on it. So we'll take that back along with that first question and get something out in the next webinar or before to you. Thank you for those questions. What is required to be a family and caregiver training provider? So that it looks like this particular question has been asked, and we will include that in the next webinar. I'm saying that and looking at our provider services person or director so that we can get that added to the next webinar. That's a good question. And there are requirements. I just don't have them in front of me. I would encourage you, if you have questions about the requirements, to take a look at the provider module, the Home and Community-Based Services Provider Module for DDRS. And you should, oh, we're getting a different screen, Richard.
Sorry.
That's okay. I was just letting you know. We can include that in the next webinar, but would encourage you to take a look at the provider module and also our provider services information on our website. Okay, for the case manager assignment, okay, that's also again about the assignment in CAMS. So we will get back to you on that. We clearly have hit a topic that has lots of questions, and so we will revisit that and get back with you. It looks like most of those questions are from area agencies on aging, which is understandable. So we will get back to you. If someone is on the MFP CIH waiver and is going to CIH waiver, do I still need to follow all the steps? So I think that is a question about the slides I covered on money follows the person. Those slides were with regard to the moving of the case from an independent case manager back to an area agency on aging for nursing facility level of care determination, at which time the area agency on aging would complete the nursing facility level of care assessment and offer, if approved, offer choice of case management providers. That was unique to the MFP program that would lead to potentially someone going to the health and wellness or pathways waiver. It is only related to the nursing facility level of care. That's a little confusing, I know. So let us know if you have any follow-up questions. But the area agencies on aging do not have any part in determining or assessing ICFID level of care. It is only nursing facility level of care today. Okay, I am seeing more questions about the caseload. Okay, I see a question. Any guidance on how to do this since we are moving from a monthly unit to a one-time fee service? The providers are confused as well. I'm not sure what we're referencing there. So if the person that submitted that could enter some clarification in the Q&A, we'll try to come back to that one. Okay, is there an easy way for us to make referrals to BEADS for those people that lose nursing facility level of care but may meet ICFID level of care? Or do we just use the BEADS website to make the referral? So great question. If you are a case manager for the health and wellness waiver and an individual is losing nursing facility level of care, we need you to highlight that for the Division of Aging team that reviews the levels of care, the nursing facility level of care assessments, and they will coordinate with BEADS on that individual having a level of care assessment for ICFID. We do, please, when you're talking with the individual and family, feel free, and we would want you to explain, okay, you're losing, you do not appear to meet nursing facility level of care any longer. If you have an intellectual or developmental disability, we would encourage you to apply for BEAD services. Here's the website with the online application, because they can do it online if they choose, or an application, a hard copy can be printed off, and it can be done paper. It is important, though, that Division of Aging and knows and that BEADS is aware that that person is losing nursing facility level of care so that we can make sure we prioritize the assessment for that individual, knowing that they no longer meet nursing facility level of care and we need to get them transitioned to the family support waiver if they choose and if they meet ICFID level of care.
Holly?
Yes.
You did get a clarification on your request for clarification. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not see that. So let me scroll down. We've got a lot of questions. Can you read it for me, Richard? I don't see it.
Yeah. The original post was any guidance on how to do this since we are moving from a monthly unit to a one-time fee service. The providers are confused as well. And then they clarified for the medication dispenser service. Attempted to change this service on one plan, and the provider was surprised with the change.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So yes, there will be, gosh, if it hasn't gone out already, to be honest, an IHCP bulletin on this particular topic with the MEDI and MEDM. And we will look for that publishing. I don't recall the date that is going to publish, and can include it next month, because I think that's, as case managers, that's something you can say to a provider. Here is the IHCP bulletin that addresses this, right? So that you have some support when you're addressing that on plans. I hope that helps. So another question about the service plans taking time. We have a team of staff that are working on those. Just know the volume is still quite high. And the best way to reduce those plans is to make sure you're including, or avoid the wait, is make sure you're including all possible information. I think in previous webinars, we provided a lot of tips on make sure you include A, B, and C, so that when we do review it, it lessens the likelihood of an RFI. But know that we understand, and we are working through them as quickly as we can. And there should be no loss of service to individuals because of the extension feature. Okay, we are getting close. We've got 3 minutes left. So I think we still have quite a few questions here. So I'm so happy that the question function is working. And we apologize again for it not working last time. We will include some of these questions next time. I thought there was one more I wanted to try to hit. Yes. Case managers on health and wellness and TBI do need to upload pick lists. That is important. Again, as we talked about early on, choice is a cornerstone of HCBS, and we need to be able to demonstrate that we are offering that choice to individuals. I realize the pick list is long and challenging. But we do need that pick list and the individual's choice documented and loaded in CAMS. We will clarify if we want the whole thing. I'm seeing some are 80 pages, some are 150. Ultimately we need to see what the person chose. So we can come back and provide some more clarification on that. Richard will make a note here and make sure I don't forget, but we can provide some additional clarification on that. But ultimately we do need some documentation of the offering of choice and what the person's choice was. So we are at 2 minutes. I am going to thank all of you. We had really great attendance today, really great questions. And I want to take a minute to say thank you to case managers and providers for partnering with us in supporting individuals and families in Indiana. We appreciate you, and we look forward to continued partnership. Let us know if there's other topics you want us to cover, but I think we've identified a few today that we can include next month as well. So have a great rest of your week. Stay warm. Hopefully snow is over for the year, and we're all anxiously awaiting spring. So thanks so much.